Alright, what game should I review next? I want to do a rhythm game. Not sure about it though. I don't really think I can review one of those. I love it, I just don't feel confident with giving a review on it. I feel like it's just gonna be generic if I just review one of those. Maybe something else. I want to do something music related. I just don't want to chance any copyright here. What do I have that's music heavy, but original and made for the game? Oh, wait a minute. How about this? No Straight Roads was developed by Metronomic and released for the Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC on August 25th, 2020. NSR is also the first game to be developed by Metronomic that is proud to also be the very first Malaysian video game. The dev team's goal with the game was to represent music to the masses without turning it into a rhythm game. They wanted the game to have the world revolve around the music in a style of an action game, which, in my honest opinion, I feel they did succeed in. No Straight Roads begins with the two main characters, Mayday and Zook, trying out for a spot to join NSR. When the judges completely reject them, even though they were the best in the contest, they decide to go after the district leaders of the city after Rock gets banned from future competitions. After dealing with the first leader, they get contacted by Cliff, who is their biggest fan, and joins them in their mission to take down NSR. They continue taking down the leaders, which range from virtual idols to artistic and chaotic. Alright, there's gonna be spoilers after this point, so I'm going to wait for a good 10 seconds for anyone who doesn't want them. I'll put a timestamp around here, and anyone that's looking through the video, there will be a notable spoilers written on the bottom right. Just skip to where the word doesn't show up anymore. After dealing with all the district leaders, Mayday and Zook come face to face against Tatiana. After the fight, it's revealed that Tatiana is really Cool Fyra, Mayday's rock idol. Cliff also shows up to reveal that not only do they know each other, but he was also a fan of her previous band. When she disagrees with Cliff, he decides to send the NSR satellite down to the tower. After a satisfying end to the cutscene, Mayday and Zook go back to the districts to return them to their previous leaders to power up the safety mechanism to stop the satellite. Once everything is done, Tatiana announces changes to NSR and Mayday declines to join and instead decides to follow her own path for the band. There is a lot more story, honestly, than what I just described there. If you just play from start to finish, you can understand what the story is about, but if you take the time to explore the little side areas, talk with the citizens, and complete the bosses on higher difficulties, you get so much more about what drives each leader to their own style of music. Now let's go to the gameplay. NSR is an action game with a rhythmic twist. Both characters have different playstyles. Mayday being a slow, heavy hitter, and Zook being a fast attacker who focuses more on combos. You can switch between both characters during fights to avoid damage and regen health. You also have skills that you unlock after each stage, which lets you use up meter to either attack, defend, or heal. If both bars are full, you can use them to unleash a super attack. Now let's talk about that twist. Everything in the game goes by rhythm. The environmental hazards and the enemies all attack or activate with the beat. From the security bots to the bosses, they always keep up with that music beat. There are even some attacks that the bosses use that can be parried with the beat to deal damage. These attacks show up with a pinkish color. If you're not confident with being able to parry these attacks, don't worry. Even the tutorial mentions that you don't need to deal with these attacks to beat the game. The next thing I want to talk about are the graphics, and honestly, I love how NSR just looks. From all the character designs to the different district locations, it's all eye candy to me. I normally don't care about the graphics of a game so long as the story and gameplay are good. This game hits that perfect point where I can easily say that it's one of the game's best points. Every district's design fits perfectly with the musical genre the leaders use, from Subatomic's cool EDM to Yinu's classic piano. Now let's talk about the music, and because this is a rhythm-oriented game, of course we're gonna have a lot of music. There's many variations of EDM, of course. Almost every boss uses it in some form. On top of that though, they each have their different sounds and feels when you listen to them. This is a game about EDM versus rock, so as you fight the bosses, the music starts changing to a rock version which sounds just as good. After finishing a boss, you can actually replay the fight with a different variation of the music, being just EDM, just rock, or even two different mixes, with every boss having a Christmas variation that also changes everything to fit the theme. I would highly recommend picking up the soundtrack if you want to listen to the music anytime you want. This is a little off topic, but I kind of want to make special mention about a specific character in the game called DK West. I want to say this right now, DK West is actually one of my favorite characters in the whole game. His whole thing is all about rap, and when you actually encounter him, it's essentially the only part of the game where it turns into a rhythm game, where you can only just avoid his attacks. West's story becomes optional after the first encounter, and it pretty much revolves around Zook. And I'm making special note here because when I first did this encounter, I was expecting it to be a lot longer. It was like 4 or 5 minutes, and that actually threw me off because I've been listening to the official soundtrack for, I want to say like a good 3 years, maybe a little bit longer. No, 3 years. I think the game came out like 3 years ago at this point, something like that. So, the 10-minute long version of the song actually goes more into West and Zook's rivalry with each other. And they actually go into it a bit more about their history. And I was a little bit surprised after recording because I was honestly expecting that encounter to actually be a lot harder for me because I've actually had issues during doing that battle my first time. So a little off topic, but I just wanted to make special mention of that. Normally I play games by myself, especially for these reviews, but I did actually get a chance to actually try out the multiplayer, and it doesn't feel quite right for me. The gameplay still feels good, but honestly the biggest complaint would actually have to go to the camera. For some reason, and me and my friend actually talked about this between each other, the game seems to have like 3 different cameras for each segment. The district camera only focuses on the first player, and the second player can easily go off screen and just get dragged if they get taken off screen. The approach camera, which is the battle just before the boss fight, that one seems to focus on whoever's closest to the camera, and that is honestly the most disorienting, especially the Sayu battle, because Sayu's battle is essentially just purely approach style. And the boss camera, which outside of Sayu's, changes focus between both players, which isn't so bad, but it can potentially get bad if things can get hectic, especially if you do hard and crazy difficulties. I feel that a camera that focuses between the players should have been a better choice, especially during the approach phases. Because, in all seriousness, the last thing I want to do is I want to do 10-10's approach with that camera. And that's no straight roads, and once again I'm gonna repeat myself. It's one of my favorite games for a reason. Coming back to play through the game again just made me feel nostalgic throughout the whole time. Even though it's been 3 years since my last playthrough, it was still fun to play through the whole thing from start to finish. I did forget to mention that this version of the game is the Encore version, which, from what I looked at other game platforms, it seems that they all use that same version now, which is updated to fix bugs, the multiplayer camera, which, again, I'm afraid to know what the version before this update was like. They also added a ton of fan art into the game, which they have plastered all over the walls, and you can go up to them. You'll essentially take a little photo of them, and you can use them as a guitar case art. This game is easily up there on my list of games, and it's a straight up recommend for me, especially if you're a fan of music-based games.